Hi, I'm Dr. Michelle, CEO of Secrets of Life and Death and Second Chance Secrets. Today I'm here to talk about your life mission, your purpose, your soul's code. What is that? What is a life mission? Does that make you kind of pissed off when you hear about that? It's like, what the hell are people talking about? A long time ago, my first yoga teacher said, "You are a spiritual being having a human adventure." Now, I already knew that because I'd been studying with a Sufi master for about 13 years by that time. So I understood that. And if you don't quite get that message, I find it very reassuring to know that I am a spiritual being, that this is a human adventure, and not to take it too seriously, but at the same time to realize that there's a reason why I'm here, that I actually need to accomplish something while I'm here. If you don't believe that you're a spiritual being having a human adventure, let me put it in a different way. Or maybe if you're on the fence, let me put it a different way. Our bodies are made up of somewhere around 300 billion cells. And each one of those cells has a code. And that code is its life purpose. So you've got 300 billion cells in your body, all with their own mission. Now here's the important thing. When they cease to fulfill their mission, when they are no longer useful, they have a code of self-destruction. It's called apoptosis. Therefore, you, as a being made up of all these 300 billion cells, has a purpose. And if you don't have a purpose, you're telling all those 300 billion cells, you don't have a purpose. Now, how do you think that's going to affect your health? How will that affect your joy in life if you don't have a purpose? So how do you know that you have a life purpose and what your life purpose is? Before I tell you that, I'm going to tell you my own story, because I didn't have the slightest inkling about life purpose until I was nearly 50 years old. That's a long time, and I don't recommend it. And what woke me up? Well, actually had a bunch of nudges from the universe over the course of time. And that's what I notice in living in this life, is that if you are not living true to yourself, and that's the word, true to yourself, because that's the same as life purpose, really, true to yourself, then things happen that are kind of going to nudge you in that direction. So the first thing that happened, I grew up as a people pleaser. These spiritual beings, we're born into these human bodies when they're tiny, little babies, totally dependent and influenced by their parents. And we get immersed in this human experience, and we think that it's real. And we develop patterns of behavior to keep us alive. So I developed the pattern of a pleaser, which works really well and is what women are expected to do, is be pleasers. So I fit right in. I did really great in school. I got great grades. I finished my PhD. I was doing all the right things. I was the good girl. And I got into my first job. I was teaching a college in Winona, Minnesota. And I did all my people pleasing, and I lost the job. I was devastated. I didn't know how to make sense of that. I mean, how could my formula not be working? I got sick, I got depressed, and then I ran out of town. Interestingly, that's what my father always did. I don't know how I picked it up, but I did, and I ran away. and I got into another job. And what I did was I started to adapt. I said, okay, I'm only going to take jobs where people want me more than I want them, so that I would reduce the likelihood of being rejected. Because guess what? I didn't like being rejected. And guess what? Nobody does like being rejected. It's part of being a human being. Human beings are wired to bond. They're wired to be in community with other human beings. And when they are rejected, it's like getting a death sentence. It's really disturbing, unless you have a different pattern. My husband has a different pattern. He's not a pleaser. He's more what you call a manager or controller. His life was so chaotic as a child, somewhat violent, somewhat unsafe, that he did not become a pleaser. So he doesn't really care what the rest of the world thinks about him. He is totally self-motivated. But he's got other problems, and we don't need to talk about those. Anyway, I continued making myself smaller and smaller so I wouldn't be rejected. It's really great to be the other kind of pattern where you don't care about being rejected. However, sometimes it prevents you from being able to know what other people want. And sometimes you do want to know what other people want. Ultimately, the solution is to find and live your purpose. And that changes a lot. So the first thing, as I said, was that I lost my job. And I tamped myself down, took smaller jobs. And then my first husband left me. He left me just when I had finished my PhD and just when I was stepping into my power. I had just gotten a promotion at my job, and he got fired, and he was despairing, and he left me. And on a rational level, I knew that it was a midlife crisis. On an emotional level, I felt abandoned. It went all the way back to my early childhood experience. And by the way, your early childhood experiences are hugely important to how you live your life. And you actually need to heal those experiences in order to step into your authentic purpose. So as a child, I bonded with my father, not my mother, who was overwhelmed with 2 other children. And then at the age of 2, he was transferred to Japan because he was in the military. And in the time that we were separated, I have no idea how long, a few months, maybe many months. By the time we got reconnected, the bond had been broken. I'd already bonded with my sister, who was 2 years old, and I saw him as somebody to manipulate through people pleasing. And that's what I did. So now my first husband, leaves me, and that whole betrayal, that whole abandonment gets blown up. What did I do? I went off to a spiritual retreat, and I actually immersed myself in that spiritual group for 13 years. Actually, I'm still part of it, but I'm not immersed quite the same way. And the escape there was, so I'm not going to do well in the world, so I'm going to be a spiritual being, and then it doesn't matter. Relationships don't matter, work doesn't matter. All that matters is my relationship to spirit. Well, let me tell you, we're here for a reason, and it's not to be, for most of us, it's not to be monks off in the wilderness. We're actually here for a purpose. Now, the good news is that being in this spiritual community, I actually woke up. I started to step into awareness of who I really am. So that when my current husband showed up, well, I was ready for love. Well, not quite. Actually, I needed to do a fair amount of early childhood healing because I had these abandonment issues and they were really getting in my way. So I did the work, and right after that, my parents started dying. First my father and then my mother. And just before my mother died, she conveyed to me this very, very, very important message. And that was, live your passion or die with regret. And my mother was, she was the poster child for living your life purpose. She was a toy designer. She sold her toy designs to major toy companies in New York. And she, maybe sometimes to the neglect of her own children, was running around hobnobbing with all these CEOs of companies like Gund and Hasbro and E.G. Dolls and having a marvelous time. And she had regrets because there were certain projects she wasn't going to get to. And I figured if she had regrets, where the hell did that leave me? It woke me up. I decided that from then on I was going to live my purpose. And I've been doing that ever since. It is a journey. And I'm going to share with you some of the challenges of living your purpose. So first of all, why do we disconnect? I already mentioned it's these early childhood patterns that we learn to play safe, to be good, or to react against our parents. So either you're the pleaser or you're the controller. Now there are other patterns, but those are the ones that I primarily work with. So the controller, they have a hard time also living their purpose because they don't want to lose control. And so they want to feel safe. And so safe isn't necessarily living your purpose. Your soul, by the way, does not care about safety. It cares about you fulfilling your mission. And it doesn't care whether you live or die. It only cares about spirit's objective, spirit's purpose, your soul's code. You keep on getting nudged to move forward, and it's scary. Why is it scary? Well, not only does your parents encourage you to live a particular way, but society does. You're taught in school to fulfill or fill in or fit into certain categories. And oftentimes your parents have an idea of who you are meant to be. Although I have to say my parents did not give me any ideas about their expectation, so I simply modeled myself after my father. He was a teacher. I figured I should be a teacher, and then gradually I did. I tried to teach at a college, and then I decided to try and teach in other places, and I still do teach. I do a lot of teaching, but I also do coaching because I needed to heal myself. And coaching, by the way, is a practice of self-healing. In other words, if you're going to be a solo entrepreneur and a coach or a healer or a change maker, you have to do the work. You have to work on yourself. And the only thing that's really going to get you through it all is your mission, your connection to spirit and divine. Okay, so we're talking about your parents and the culture and your own beliefs. So there are the beliefs that also you need to be a good girl, you need to fit in, you need to make a certain amount of money, and all these material things about living in this material plane can cloud us from seeing what we're really supposed to be doing. And you may be still thinking, well, what is this supposed to be doing? All I can say is from my own experience and from my work with my clients as a psychosomatic, psychological, sociological analyst, that people have in their core something that they need to fulfill. And when they are working on that, it's really wonderful. It's fulfilling in and of itself. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that in a minute, but I want to talk to you a little bit about what holds you back. So in addition to the beliefs and the culture and your parents and all their training that is now programmed into your brain are the behavior patterns. And I mentioned the behavior patterns of the pleaser and the controller. And those patterns are almost unconscious. You don't even realize when they're operating. And they are also very seductive because when you're in that pattern, you actually feel good. over time, you have developed a physiological pattern where when you are living according to your behavior pattern, you will receive signals of pleasure from your brain. In other words, you trigger dopamine. So let me give you an example. The hero. A hero is generally a people pleaser, although there's some controlling aspects to the hero as well. So recently I had an opportunity to come and swoop in and save somebody. Oh, doesn't that feel good to save somebody? Doesn't it make you feel like really worthwhile? And to say no to that is really hard. You actually feel grief when you say no to that opportunity. And on the psychological emotional level, your mind is saying, oh, how can you be so cruel not to save that person? My experience as a coach is that when you save somebody, you rob them of the opportunity of becoming powerful themselves. Let me say that again. When you save somebody, you rob them of the opportunity of becoming empowered themselves. That's what I actually had to learn as a coach, because the habit is, and a lot of coaches do this, they try to take on the responsibility of the success of their clients. And they feel very frustrated when their clients don't have success. It's not up to you. You can point the way, but they have to take the action. And that was one of my biggest lessons as a coach, was to set up their learning and their experience so that they can win. That it's not about me being the hero. So hero and pleaser is one pattern, and the other one is the controller. Now what happens with the controller is that they often get involved in relationships where they have somebody who's their project, that they're trying to save and improve. Only the catch-22 is that if they do improve, if they do succeed, you're out of a job. Now, you don't need either of those patterns, but they are very deeply ingrained. And that's the work I do. I enable people to break those behavior patterns, to repattern the brain into new patterns that are actually more satisfying and that set you on your path to fulfilling your purpose. I wanted to mention that next week I am going to do a 5-day Facebook challenge on living your purpose. So be sure to be in this group and keep your eyes open, because every day next week I'm going to be giving a training and going to do a question and answer session later on in the day to answer any of your questions about this series. So let's see, what's holding you back? So another reason why you might hesitate is that you're comfortable. Now, if you have the kind of the controller pattern, you might have things set up pretty well. Controllers tend to be very successful in the world, as opposed to pleasers who tend to lack the self-esteem, and so they don't go full out. They're insecure, whereas controllers are not. They're like totally out there in the world. They may not have as much success in love, and their health might be trashed, but in terms of success in the material world, they often do quite well. And they may have no motivation for changing. And they are perfectly happy the way they are until something comes along that really throws them off. Yay for our spiritual being that comes along and gives us that universal nudge that says, time to wake up, time to change, time to live your purpose. you actually want to be grateful for that, because at the end of your life, if you don't take advantage of this wonderful, amazing life opportunity, you're going to have regrets. You're going to feel bad. When you're living your purpose, you actually have the opportunity to bring all of what I call the 3 areas of life satisfaction: love, health, and wealth, into harmony. You don't get caught up too much in the material plane of having too much. You have what you need, what supports you in fulfilling your mission. And you have time for love, and you have time to take care of your health. That's the promise of living your purpose. But you have to be careful. You have to be to maintain a certain amount of balance between spirit and body and the brain. Because spirit, as I already told you, doesn't care about this 3-dimensional reality. Spirit only cares about fulfilling its purpose and its mission, and it will keep on nudging you. So you have to manage that. And that's one of the things that we're going to be talking about in the Facebook challenge next week. So I hope you get on board and join me. Hey, thank you for joining. And what is your mission? Do you know what your life purpose is? That's what we're talking about today, is living your life purpose. And this is my mission, is to wake up as many people as possible to their life purpose. And what's going on in the world right now is all about wake up, time to wake up. And yes, there is darkness, but that creates the pressure for us to wake up. And when all of us are living our true purpose, the world is going to change. Yes, blah, blah, blah. No, it really is. And besides that, even if it doesn't, you're going to feel so much better. So why bother? I've already talked about that. I'm just jumping ahead of myself here. Why bother? 1 is that at the end of your life, you'll regret. And number 2, the universe will send you nudges. I really strongly counsel that you don't wait until you have a significant loss, although oftentimes that's what brings people to me, is a loss that is disturbing, that wakes you up or leaves you in despair, and then you cannot move forward, and that becomes the impetus. Grief is often a gateway. It's an opportunity, whatever has been before is somewhat destroyed, or you can't go back once that person's gone. Now, it doesn't have to be death. It could also be somebody who left you, like your partner or your husband has left you, and then, oh my gosh, now what? And you have to recreate your life. This is a great opportunity, and it provides you with the fuel and the motivation. But you don't need to wait for that. If you are already on a path and you're trying to find your way and you need some guidance, and you know that there are certain things that are holding you back. By the way, I've seen this many, many times with coaches and healers and entrepreneurs, is that they sabotage themselves. They undermine their efforts. They get to a certain point and then they sabotage themselves. They suddenly attract people who are going to bash them, or their clients leave them. There is something that happens because there is some area that needs to be healed, that needs to be addressed so that you can move forward. Might be as simple as getting permission, but it could be more complex, like violating an agreement that you made with your parents about success. So how to get yourself in alignment with your life purpose? Well, join my Facebook challenge next week and do the exercises. There's going to be some exercise sheets, and there are going to be some trainings to get you going, and we'll get you started And there will be a webinar at the end of the week to put it all together and enable you to see where your blocks are, where you're headed, and what you need to do next. That's all I have for today. Be brilliant. Join if you haven't already, you probably are in my Facebook group, my private group. And make sure to look out for the trainings and to watch them and to fill out. There's going to be exercises every day, short exercises that you can do pretty quickly. And that's today. Bye for now. Be brilliant.